Mark had chosen this neighborhood because it was quiet. After many years of hard work far away from home, he wanted one thing more than anything else: peace for his daughter. The houses were neat, the streets were clean, and children played safely outside. It felt like the right place to start over. Mark lived with his daughter Lily in a small white house near the corner. Lily was 10 years old, curious about everything, and full of life. She loved riding her bike, drawing pictures, and asking endless questions. Mark enjoyed those moments with her more than anything he had ever done in his life. Every morning, Mark walked Lily to the bus stop. Every evening, they ate dinner together at the same small table. Their life was simple and calm. The neighborhood was controlled by a homeowners association. There were rules about parking, trash bins, lawn care, and noise. Mark read the rules carefully and followed them. He did not want trouble. He just wanted to be left alone. Most neighbors were friendly enough. They smiled, waved, and kept their distance. But one person stood out. Her name was Brenda. Brenda lived 3 houses down. She had lived in the neighborhood for years and believed she knew what was best for everyone. She watched from her window, walked slowly past houses, and took notes on her phone. Many neighbors whispered about her behavior, but no one confronted her directly. Brenda believed rules were more important than people. One sunny afternoon, Lily came home early from school. Mark was still at work, so Lily did what she always did. She grabbed her bike and rode along the sidewalk in front of their house. She stayed close, just as her father had taught her. She laughed as the wind brushed her face. For a few minutes, she forgot everything else. Brenda noticed immediately. She stood on her porch, arms folded, eyes fixed on Lily. In her mind, Lily was too loud, too careless, too much. Brenda told herself she was protecting the neighborhood. Lily stopped near the curb to fix her shoe. Her bike leaned gently against the sidewalk. She was not blocking the road. She was not bothering anyone. Brenda reached for her phone. Instead of walking over and speaking to the child, she stepped inside her house and made a call. Her voice was calm, confident, and firm. She described a situation that was not true. She made it sound serious. Lily did not know any of this was happening. 10 minutes later, a dark car pulled up nearby. 2 men stepped out wearing uniforms that looked official. They approached Lily slowly. Lily felt her stomach tighten. She had never seen them before. One of the men asked her questions. His tone was strict. He said they had received a report. Lily tried to explain that she lived there and was just riding her bike. Her hands shook as she spoke. Brenda watched from across the street, satisfied. Lily felt scared. She wished her father were there. At that moment, Mark turned onto the street. He noticed the car first. Then he saw the men. Then he saw Lily standing still, her bike on the ground. Something in his chest tightened. He parked quickly and stepped out of the car. Mark walked toward them calmly, but his eyes were sharp. He did not raise his voice. He simply asked what was going on. The men explained they were responding to a complaint. Their story did not sound right. Mark noticed small details that others might miss. The way they spoke. The way they avoided certain answers. Lily ran to her father and held his arm tightly. Mark placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and told her she was safe. Brenda stepped forward then, pretending to be concerned. She said she had called because she felt the child was causing a problem. Her words were cold and rehearsed. Mark listened without interrupting. Inside, his calm was turning into something stronger. He knew something was wrong. Mark stood beside Lily, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. He kept his voice calm, even though his mind was racing. He asked the 2 men simple questions. He wanted to know who sent them and why. The men exchanged quick looks before answering. Their responses sounded rehearsed. They mentioned a complaint but could not clearly explain what rule had been broken. Mark listened carefully, paying attention to every word. Brenda stepped closer, her face tight with confidence. She spoke quickly, repeating the same story about noise and danger. She acted as if she was doing everyone a favor. Mark did not argue with her. He did not raise his voice. Instead, he asked one of the men for identification. The question changed the mood instantly. One man hesitated. The other reached slowly toward his pocket and pulled out a card. Mark examined it closely. Something was missing. Something important. Mark handed it back politely and asked another simple question. Which local office were they from? The men avoided eye contact. Lily looked up at her father. She could feel the tension but trusted him completely. Mark squeezed her shoulder gently and told her to stand behind him. Neighbors began stepping outside their homes. Some whispered to each other. Others stared quietly. Brenda noticed the attention and straightened her posture, trying to stay in control. Mark calmly took out his phone. He did not threaten anyone. He did not accuse them loudly. He simply said he was going to verify the situation himself. He stepped a few feet away and made a call. The men shifted nervously. While Mark spoke quietly on the phone, Brenda crossed her arms. She believed she had done nothing wrong. In her mind, rules justified everything. After a few minutes, Mark returned. His expression was steady, but firm. He asked the men one final time to explain who sent them. They could not. That was when one of the neighbors spoke up. A man named Paul who lived across the street said he had seen Brenda on her phone earlier. Another neighbor nodded in agreement. Brenda's face tightened. She insisted she had followed proper steps. She claimed she was protecting the community. Mark looked at her directly for the first time. He told her calmly that making false reports was serious. He said children should never be scared because of personal grudges or misunderstandings. The words hit harder than any shout. The men realized the situation was falling apart. They stepped back and said they would leave. Mark told them to stay until the matter was clear. Moments later, a real patrol car arrived. The difference was obvious immediately. The officer greeted Mark professionally and listened carefully to the explanation. The fake story unraveled quickly. The officer asked the two men questions they could not answer properly. Their confidence vanished. Brenda tried to speak again, but the officer raised a hand and asked her to wait. Lily held her father's hand tightly. The officer explained to Brenda that making false reports could have serious consequences. He also explained that children playing safely in front of their homes was not a violation of any rule. Brenda's voice grew smaller. The two men were escorted away. The officer apologized to Mark and Lily for the confusion and reassured Lily that she had done nothing wrong. Lily finally smiled. Neighbors slowly returned to their homes, whispering less now and thinking more. The street felt different. Something had shifted. Brenda stood alone on her porch. Mark thanked the officer and turned to Lily. He knelt down and looked her in the eyes. He told her she was brave and that she should never be afraid to speak the truth. That night, Lily slept peacefully. Mark, however, stayed awake longer than usual. He knew this was not the end. The next morning, the neighborhood felt quieter than usual. People still went to work and children still waited for the bus, but there was a new awareness in the air. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now exchanged small nods. Everyone knew what had happened. Mark walked Lily to the bus stop as always. He held her hand a little longer than usual. Lily looked calm again, but the memory had not fully faded. Mark reminded her that she was safe and that she had done nothing wrong. After Lily left, Mark returned home and checked his mailbox. Inside was an official notice from the Homeowners Association. There would be an emergency meeting that evening. Attendance was required. Mark expected it. That afternoon, Brenda stayed inside her house. Her curtains were drawn. She replayed the event in her mind again and again. In her view, she had tried to protect the neighborhood. She did not believe she was wrong. Still, a quiet unease settled in her chest. The meeting room filled quickly that evening. Chairs scraped across the floor as neighbors took their seats. The association board sat at the front, papers spread neatly across the table. Brenda sat in the first row, chin lifted. Mark arrived a few minutes later. He chose a seat near the back. He did not seek attention. He simply waited. The head of the association, a woman named Linda, opened the meeting. Her voice was firm but controlled. She explained that the meeting had been called because of a serious incident involving a resident and a child. The room went silent. Linda asked Brenda to explain her actions. Brenda stood up slowly. She spoke about safety, rules, and responsibility. She said she believed she was doing her duty. She avoided looking at Mark. Linda listened carefully. Then she asked if anyone else wished to speak. Mark stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse anyone. He simply told the story exactly as it happened. He described his daughter riding her bike. He described strangers questioning her. He described the fear in her eyes. Several neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Mark explained that rules should protect people, not harm them. He said no child should ever feel unsafe in their own neighborhood. The room remained quiet long after he finished speaking. Linda thanked him and asked a few clarifying questions. Mark answered calmly and clearly. Then something unexpected happened. One by one, neighbors began to speak. They shared their own experiences. Warnings over small things. Notes left on doors. Calls made without conversation. A pattern emerged. Brenda's confidence began to crack. Linda reviewed the association guidelines aloud. She pointed out where procedures had not been followed. She explained that no resident had the authority to make false reports or involve outsiders. Brenda tried to interrupt, but Linda asked her to sit. The board took a short break. When they returned, the decision was clear. Brenda was removed from her volunteer position. She was issued a formal warning. Any future actions like this would lead to stronger consequences. The words hit hard. Brenda's face flushed. She looked around the room, expecting support, but found none. People avoided her gaze. Mark remained seated. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply watched. The meeting ended quietly. Outside, neighbors gathered in small groups. Some approached Mark to thank him. Others apologized for staying silent before. Mark nodded politely. He did not blame them. He understood fear and hesitation. Brenda walked past without a word. That night, Mark sat at the kitchen table after Lily had gone to bed. He stared at a photo of Lily smiling at the beach. His life before this neighborhood had been full of responsibility and discipline. He had learned to stay calm under pressure and protect those who depended on him. He had hoped those skills would stay in the past. But now he knew something important. Protecting his daughter did not always mean strength. Sometimes it meant standing up quietly and letting truth speak. And he sensed that the story was not over yet. The days after the meeting felt different. The neighborhood still looked the same, but something beneath the surface had shifted. People were more open. They spoke more freely. The quiet fear that once kept them silent was slowly fading. Brenda stayed mostly inside her house. Her routine had been broken. She no longer walked the streets with confidence or checked rule boards every morning. Without her position in the association, she felt lost. For the first time in years, no one asked her opinion. Mark noticed the change but did not comment on it. His focus remained on Lily. Lily returned to her normal habits. She rode her bike again, played outside, and laughed with friends. Still, sometimes she looked toward the street carefully before riding too far. Mark noticed those moments and made sure he was nearby. One afternoon, Mark received a message from Linda, the head of the association. She asked if he could attend another meeting, this time smaller and informal. She said the board wanted his input. Mark agreed. At the meeting, only a few people were present. Linda explained that the association wanted to rebuild trust. They wanted to make sure something like this never happened again. She asked Mark how they could do better. Mark spoke honestly. He said rules mattered, but people mattered more. He said communication should always come before action. He also said that children should always feel safe in their own community. The board listened carefully and took notes. Linda thanked him and mentioned something else. She had looked into Mark's background after the incident, not out of suspicion, but curiosity. She said she had learned about his years of service and leadership. Mark nodded but did not expand on it. Word spread quietly through the neighborhood. People began to understand why Mark had stayed so calm that day. Why he noticed details others missed. Why he spoke with such control. He never mentioned it himself. One evening, a neighbor named Paul knocked on Mark's door. He looked uncomfortable but sincere. He said Brenda had approached him earlier, asking for advice. She felt misunderstood and isolated. She did not know how to face the neighborhood anymore. Mark listened carefully. Paul asked what Mark thought. Mark paused before answering. He said accountability mattered, but so did growth. He said people could change if they were willing to listen. That same week, Brenda received a notice from the association. She was required to attend a conflict training session before being allowed to participate in any community activities again. At first, she was angry. Then she was embarrassed. Finally, she felt tired. She attended the session reluctantly. There, she listened to stories that sounded familiar. People talked about fear, misunderstanding, and the damage caused by false assumptions. Brenda heard words that made her uncomfortable because they reflected her own actions. For the first time, she questioned herself. Days later, she saw Lily riding her bike again. Brenda stood on her porch, watching. This time, she did not reach for her phone. She watched Lily laugh. Brenda felt a strange heaviness in her chest. Later that evening, Mark was working in his yard when Brenda approached him slowly. She stopped a few feet away. Her posture was different. Her voice was quieter. She said she wanted to apologize. Mark listened without interrupting. She admitted she had acted without thinking. She said she let control replace kindness. She said she was wrong. Mark looked at her for a moment. Then he thanked her for saying it. He told her that apologies mattered most when they were followed by change. Brenda nodded. She said she understood. As she walked away, Mark felt something settle inside him. Not relief, but closure. That night, Mark sat with Lily and helped her with a school project. She asked him why some adults made mistakes even when they thought they were right. Mark smiled softly and said everyone was learning, even grown-ups. Outside, the neighborhood lights glowed softly. Peace had returned, but this time, it felt stronger. And Mark knew that the final chapter was still ahead. Weeks passed, and the neighborhood slowly found a new rhythm. The tension that once lingered had faded. People smiled more. Conversations lasted longer. The street no longer felt like a place where everyone was watching everyone else. It felt like a community again. Mark noticed the change in small ways. Neighbors waved more often. Children played together without parents hovering nervously nearby. Even the association emails sounded different, less strict and more respectful. Lily felt it too. She rode her bike freely now, her laughter carrying down the street. She no longer checked over her shoulder. She no longer asked if she was allowed to play outside. Her confidence returned naturally, like sunlight after a long storm. One Saturday morning, the association organized a neighborhood gathering in the park. It was the first event in a long time. Tables were set up with snacks. Kids ran across the grass. Adults talked in small circles. Mark and Lily arrived together. Lily ran off to join other children, while Mark stayed near the edge, observing quietly. He felt content watching Lily feel safe again. Linda approached him with a smile. She thanked him once more for speaking up. She said the board had rewritten several policies to focus on communication and fairness. She said the neighborhood had learned a valuable lesson. Mark nodded. He did not see himself as the reason for the change. He believed people had simply chosen to listen. Brenda arrived later than most. She walked slowly, unsure of where to stand. A few people noticed her and paused. The silence lasted only a moment. Then something unexpected happened. One neighbor waved at her. Another nodded politely. A child ran past without fear or tension. Brenda took a deep breath and joined the group. She stayed quiet at first, listening more than speaking. When she did speak, her tone was softer. She asked questions instead of giving instructions. Mark watched from a distance. At one point, Lily returned to Mark's side holding a paper cup of juice. She looked up at him and asked if she could go play again. Mark smiled and said yes. As Lily ran back toward the others, she passed Brenda. For a brief moment, they made eye contact. Brenda smiled gently and stepped aside to give Lily space. It was a small moment, but it mattered. Later that evening, Mark and Lily walked home together as the sun began to set. The streetlights turned on one by one. The neighborhood felt calm and warm. Lily asked Mark if they were going to move someday. Mark asked why she wondered that. She said she liked it here now. Mark told her that home was not just a place. It was where people felt safe and respected. He said that sometimes home had to go through hard moments before becoming strong. Lily nodded, thinking carefully. That night, after Lily went to bed, Mark sat on the porch alone. He reflected on everything that had happened. His life had taught him discipline, patience, and responsibility. But this experience had reminded him of something else. Courage did not always look loud. Sometimes it looked calm. Sometimes it looked like asking the right questions. Sometimes it looked like standing still and letting truth speak for itself. Mark knew the neighborhood would never be perfect. People would still make mistakes. But now, there was awareness. There was accountability. There was balance. Inside the house, Lily slept peacefully. Outside, the street was quiet, not with tension, but with trust. Mark stood up, turned off the porch light, and went inside. The chapter had closed. And a better one had begun.